The rain poured against the diner windows like 1,000 tiny tears that refused to stop falling. Inside, the dim yellow lights reflected off chrome tables and half-empty ketchup bottles. It was the kind of place where no one stayed long, where loneliness clung to every seat like a silent ghost. And in that corner booth, near the window streaked with rain, sat a man who had forgotten what warmth felt like. Alex Reynolds, 38, had been coming to the Rustic Spoon for 3 months. Every night at exactly 7 o'clock, he'd order the same thing: black coffee, scrambled eggs, and toast. He didn't eat because he was hungry. He ate because it was the only thing that still felt like routine, something that kept him from completely falling apart. The piano teacher's fingers were elegant even as they absently stirred his coffee, the motion mechanical yet graceful. His wedding ring was gone. His apartment was half empty. And his heart, well, that was buried somewhere under the rubble of loss he didn't know how to escape from. David Anderson had passed away in a car accident last winter. And since that night, Alex's world had dimmed to gray. They had met at an LGBT fundraiser 5 years ago. David captivated by Alex's performance on the grand piano. Their love had bloomed quickly. Two souls who'd finally found home in each other's eyes. A home they'd planned to share with a child. The nursery already painted in soft yellows and blues, filled with tiny clothes and stuffed animals. The adoption papers had been signed just 3 weeks before the accident. Now that room remained locked, a shrine to dreams that never had the chance to breathe. Alex had stopped believing in fate, in kindness, even in people. Every smile felt rehearsed, every kindness temporary. He sat in silence, listening to the clinking plates, the distant hum of an old jukebox playing jazz, and the sound of rain that reminded him too much of the night everything ended. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected connections, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our Heart Stories channel. That night was no different until it was. The door to the diner swung open, letting in a sharp gust of cold Seattle air and the sound of heavy rain. A young man stumbled in, soaked to the bone, holding a small boy in his arms. The child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, had a thin frame and tired eyes that spoke of too many nights without comfort. The man's hair was wet, sticking to his cheeks, and his jacket was torn at the sleeve. He looked around, desperate, like someone trying to find a small island in a storm. Alex looked up briefly, uninterested, until he saw the boy. The kid clung to the man's neck, whispering something, his lips pale. They walked to the counter and the man spoke softly to the waitress. Alex didn't mean to overhear, but the diner was quiet enough that the trembling voice carried through the air. "Please, can I get just a bowl of soup for my son? I'll pay you tomorrow. We've been walking for hours." Sometimes the universe doesn't just knock on our door. It breaks it down, forcing us to see beyond our own pain. And in that moment, as the waitress shook her head apologetically, Alex felt something shift inside him. Perhaps it was the rainbow bracelet on the young man's wrist, or the protective way he held the boy despite his obvious exhaustion. Whatever it was, it reminded Alex of who he used to be before grief hollowed him out. Life, it seemed, had a strange way of bringing together broken pieces that might, against all odds, still fit. Without thinking, Alex stood up. His chair scraped the floor, making everyone glance at him. He walked to the counter, pulled out his wallet, and said simply, "Add whatever they want to my bill." The young man turned to him, startled. "No, please, you don't have to." Alex met his eyes for the first time. They were tired, but not defeated. "It's fine, man," he said. "And sit down. He's hungry." The man's lips trembled as he nodded, and the waitress gestured to a nearby booth. He hesitated for a moment before quietly asking, "Would it be okay if we sit with you? Parker doesn't like being alone." Alex blinked, taken aback. He had spent months avoiding company, building walls no one could climb. Yet here was this stranger, polite, sincere, and cold from the rain, asking to share his table. He hesitated, But the small boy's eyes looked up at him, wide and full of innocence. "Sure," Alex said quietly. "Have a seat." They sat down across from him. The man wrapped his arms around the boy, trying to warm him. "Thank you," he murmured. "I'm Jackson Miller, and this is Parker." Alex nodded, still unsure what to say. He wasn't used to talking anymore. But when the food came, 2 bowls of soup and warm bread, he found himself watching them. The way Parker's small hands held the spoon carefully, the joy in his eyes when he tasted something hot, the relief in Jackson's smile. It was a scene Alex didn't realize he'd missed so much. For the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him. Not just pity, but life. "Do you play music?" Parker asked suddenly, pointing to Alex's fingers that had been unconsciously tapping a melody on the table. Alex stilled his hand, surprised. "Yes, I teach piano at Benaroya Hall." The boy's eyes widened. "I always wanted to learn piano. Mom, Aunt Sarah, she promised to teach me before she got sick." Jackson's gaze fell, and he gently ruffled Parker's hair. "Sarah was my sister," he explained softly. "Parker's been with me since she passed from cancer 2 years ago." The words hung in the air, heavy with untold stories. Alex found himself wanting to know more, despite the walls he'd so carefully constructed around his heart. Between quiet sips of soup, Jackson explained that he and Parker had been evicted from their apartment after he lost his job as a graphic designer. They'd been staying at a shelter, but it was overcrowded. Tonight, they had nowhere else to go. He wasn't asking for help, just a moment to rest and feed his child. "Texas wasn't kind to a gay man raising his nephew," Jackson added, his voice dropping. "The local pastor made sure everyone knew how he felt about that. Parker got bullied at school, kids repeating things they heard at home." He absently touched the rainbow bracelet on his wrist. "We came to Seattle hoping for something different. I thought things would be better here." Alex listened, really listened. Jackson's voice carried the kind of strength that comes from surviving when everything's been stripped away. And when he laughed softly at something Parker said about the soup being as hot as the sun but way yummier, Alex realized how long it had been since he had heard laughter that wasn't forced. Hours passed like minutes. The rain outside slowed, and the diner grew quiet. Parker, full and warm, fell asleep with his head in Jackson's lap. Jackson's eyes softened as he looked at him. "He's all I have," he whispered. "And every day I'm scared I'll fail him." Alex's chest tightened. He remembered saying almost the same words to David before their adoption application was approved, before the accident that took everything. For a moment, the pain returned like a wave, but instead of drowning in it, he looked at Jackson and said gently, "You're not failing him. You're here. You're fighting. That's what matters." Jackson looked at him, his eyes glistening. "You sound like someone who's lost a lot, too." Alex gave a small, sad smile. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess I have." In the reflection of the rain-streaked window, he caught a glimpse of his own face alongside Jackson and Parker's. 3 strangers connected by nothing but rain and soup and shared understanding of what it means to keep going when the world falls apart. Sometimes healing begins not when we find answers, but when we find someone who understands the questions we've been asking in silence. When they finally stood to leave, Jackson reached into his pocket and tried to hand Alex a crumpled $5 bill. "It's not much," he said, "but I'll pay you back the rest soon." Alex shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Just take care of him." Jackson hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand. "You have no idea how much this means. Thank you." Alex nodded, but after they left, he sat for a long time, staring at the empty seats across from him. The diner felt different now, warmer somehow. He didn't expect to see them again, but fate had other plans. The next morning, as Alex left for work, he saw Jackson and Parker sitting outside a small library across the street. Parker was absorbed in a book about musical instruments, while Jackson looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes betraying a sleepless night. Alex stopped. Something told him not to just walk away, so he crossed the street. "Hey," he said softly. You two doing okay? Jackson looked up, surprised, then smiled faintly. We're fine, we just needed somewhere dry to wait. Alex hesitated before asking, have you found somewhere to stay? Jackson shook his head. Not yet. The shelter said maybe next week. Alex thought for a long moment, his mind at war with itself. The careful walls he'd built since David's death warned him against getting involved. But something stronger, perhaps David's voice whispering in his memory, pushed him forward. I've got a spare room, he heard himself say. It's not much, but it's warm. You can stay until you find something. Jackson's eyes widened. We couldn't possibly. It's fine, Alex said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. No strings, just a safe place. When Jackson looked at him for a long moment before nodding, tears welling up. Thank you. Alex led them back to his apartment, a spacious but sparsely furnished place with views of the Seattle skyline obscured by rain clouds. He showed them to the living room, not yet ready to offer the locked nursery that stood like a shrine at the end of the hallway. Parker immediately noticed the grand piano in the corner, his eyes lighting up. You really do play, he whispered, approaching it with reverence. Alex nodded. It's been a while since I played for anyone but my students. The truth was, he hadn't played for pleasure since David died. The music had died with him. Jackson pulled something from his wallet, a pressed red maple leaf, edges worn from handling. My sister gave this to me when I came out to her, he explained quietly while Parker explored the apartment. She said red maples are the most vibrant after storms and wind. That's you, she told me. Stronger and more beautiful because of what you've weathered. He smiled sadly. Sometimes I wonder if she was right. Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. Jackson cooked breakfast every morning, insisting it was his way of saying thank you. The smell of coffee and pancakes filled the apartment that had smelled like nothing for months. Parker's questions about the piano grew more persistent. And one evening, Alex found himself sitting beside the boy, showing him how to play a simple melody. The sound of music, actual music, not the technical exercises he drilled his students on, echoed through the halls again. Alex showed Parker how to place his small fingers on the keys, and the joy on the boy's face when he played his first notes was like sunlight breaking through clouds. That night, Alex's phone rang. It was Parker's school. There was an issue with the guardian paperwork, and they were concerned about the living situation. The administrator's voice held thinly veiled suspicion when Alex explained that Jackson and Parker were staying with him temporarily. And what exactly is your relationship to Miller, the woman asked, words sharp with judgment. Alex felt a flare of anger, the first strong emotion besides grief he had felt in months. We're friends, he said firmly, and I'm helping them because that's what decent people do. After hanging up, Alex found Jackson sitting on the couch, head in his hands. I heard, Jackson said softly. I'm sorry, and we're causing you trouble. Alex sat beside him. No, you're not. The world just makes it hard for people who don't fit their narrow ideas of family. Is that what happened to you? Jackson asked carefully. I've noticed the locked room, the way you sometimes look at Parker like you're seeing someone else. The question hung in the air. Alex hadn't talked about David to anyone, had kept his grief sealed tight like the nursery door. But in the gentle quiet of that moment, with Jackson's understanding eyes on him, the lock finally turned. We often think we need grand gestures to heal our deepest wounds, but sometimes all it takes is someone patient enough to sit with us in our pains without trying to fix it. His name was David, Alex finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. We were together for 5 years. We were going to be parents. He looked toward the locked door. The nursery was ready, the adoption papers signed, and then a drunk driver in the rain. His voice broke. I haven't opened that door since. Jackson didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply reached out and placed his hand over Alex's. Thank you for telling me, he said. The simplicity of his response was more healing than any well-meaning advice could have been. The doorbell rang the next morning, startling them all. When Alex opened it, he found an older woman with silver hair and David's warm brown eyes. "Eleanor," he breathed. David's mother stood in the doorway, a bus of baked goods in her arms. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, though they both knew her home was an hour away. "I thought maybe you'd want some company." Her eyes widened when Parker peeked around the corner, curious about their visitor. "Oh, Wuffy," she said softly. "I didn't realize you had guests." The word hung awkwardly in the air. "Eleanor, this is Jackson and his son Parker. They're staying with me for a while." Alex watched as emotions crossed her face. Confusion, perhaps a flicker of hurt, and then something softer. "Well," she said, recovering quickly, "I brought enough muffins for everyone." Over coffee, Eleanor watched Parker and Jackson with curious eyes. When Parker mentioned learning piano, her expression softened. David loved music, she told him. He couldn't play to save his life, but he loved watching Alex perform. Said it was like watching someone speak without words. The tension in the air eased as Eleanor shared stories about David. Not the tragic end, but the vibrant life. How he'd collected vintage records. How he'd danced terribly but enthusiastically in the kitchen. How he'd insisted on buying a stuffed giraffe for the nursery because it was the perfect height to reach the stars. Later, as Parker napped on the couch, Eleanor pulled Alex aside. "I kept them," she whispered. "All the baby things David bought. I couldn't bear to think of you facing that alone." Her eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd see you with a family again. They're not, Alex began, but stopped. What were they, strangers' house guests? The words felt inadequate for the warmth that had crept back into his life. "Does it matter what you call it?" Eleanor asked gently. "I see how you look at that boy when he's at the piano, and how his father looks at you when you're not watching." She squeezed his hand. "David would want you to be happy, Alex. He'd want you to open that door again." After Eleanor left, Alex found Jackson in the kitchen, staring out the window at the clearing sky. "Your mother-in-law is kind," Jackson said. "She would have been," Alex corrected softly. "We never got the chance to make it official." Jackson turned to face him. "I know that feeling. The would-have-beens are sometimes harder than what actually happened." He hesitated. "When Sarah was dying, she made me promise to give Parker a real family. I've tried so hard, but—" "You are a real family," Alex interrupted. "You and Parker, that's as real as it gets." Jackson smiled sadly. "Then why does Texas think they have the right to take him from me?" He pulled out a letter that had arrived that morning. His family was challenging his guardianship, claiming a single gay man couldn't provide a proper home. "They never wanted him when Sarah was alive. They just don't want me to have him." Alex felt anger rise in his chest. "They won't win," he said firmly. "You don't know that," Jackson whispered. "I'm unemployed, basically homeless." "You're not homeless anymore," Alex said, surprising himself. "And I know a lawyer, David's friend. She specializes in family law." That evening, as Parker played his new favorite four-note melody on the piano, Alex made a call, then another. By nightfall, he had arranged a meeting with the lawyer and reached out to his connections at the Seattle Arts Council about graphic design opportunities. As he passed the locked nursery on his way to bed, Alex paused, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Not today, perhaps, but soon the door wouldn't stay closed forever. In the quiet spaces between our greatest losses and our new beginnings, we sometimes discover that healing isn't about moving on from the past, but about allowing it to exist alongside a future we never imagined possible. A month passed, then two. Seasons began to shift in Seattle, rain giving way to tentative sunshine. Inside Alex's apartment, a different kind of thawing was taking place. Jackson had found work through Alex's connections, designing promotional materials for the symphony. Parker had started piano lessons. Not with Alex, who insisted on a proper teacher, but under his watchful guidance at home. The knock came on a Sunday morning. A tall man with Jackson's eyes, but none of his gentleness, stood at the door. "Taylor?" Jackson breathed, recognizing his older brother. "How did you find us?" "Mom and Dad hired someone," Taylor said tersely, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His gaze swept the apartment, lingering on the family photos of Alex and David, the sheet music scattered near the piano, the comfortable domesticity that had settled over the place. "So this is where you've been hiding my nephew." The custody hearing was scheduled for the following month. Jackson's parents claimed he was an unfit guardian, unstable, unemployed, living with a stranger. They wanted Parker back in Texas, away from the lifestyle they believed would harm him. They never even sent a birthday card, Jackson said that night, voice breaking as he sat on the edge of Alex's bed. "They didn't want anything to do with him until they found out I had him." Alex sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "They won't win," he promised again. "We won't let them." It was the first time he'd said "we" so definitively, the first acknowledgement of what they were becoming to each other. Jackson looked up, vulnerability and hope mingling in his eyes. "Why are you doing all this? You barely know us." Alex was quiet for a long moment. "Because when you walked into that diner, you reminded me that I was still alive." He took a deep breath. "And I need to show you something." He led Jackson to the locked door, his hand trembling slightly as he turned the key. The nursery looked exactly as it had 10 months ago. Yellow walls, a wooden crib, stuffed animals arranged on a shelf, a mobile of stars and moons hung from the ceiling, dust dulling its once bright colors. "David and I were 3 weeks away from bringing our child home," Alex said softly. "We'd picked out names, read all the books. We thought we had all the time in the world." He touched the crib railing gently. "After he died, I couldn't bear to change anything. Couldn't move forward. Couldn't go back." Jackson stood beside him, their arms brushing. "What changed?" Alex turned to look at him. "You did. You and Parker." The words hung between them, honest and exposed. "I want to help you fight for him. And I was thinking, maybe this room doesn't have to stay locked anymore." The day before the hearing, they gathered in the living room. Alex, Jackson, Parker, Eleanor, and Sarah, the lawyer. They'd built their case carefully. Jackson's new job, stable housing, Parker's excellent school performance, testimonials from teachers and neighbors. "There's one more thing," Alex said, sliding a document across the table. "If you're comfortable with it." Jackson read it silently, his eyes widening. A petition for joint legal guardianship. Alex would legally become Parker's second guardian, strengthening their case immeasurably. "Are you sure?" Jackson whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." Alex replied. In the courtroom, Jackson's parents sat rigid and judgmental, their attorney arguing that Parker belonged with real family in a traditional home. When Alex took the stand, he spoke not of legal precedents, but of piano lessons and homework help, of nightmares soothed in breakfast pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. "Family isn't about biology," he said firmly. "It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves without conditions." The judge ruled in Jackson's favor. Joint guardianship was approved. As they left the courthouse, Parker ran ahead, spinning joyfully in the unexpected sunshine. Jackson turned to Alex, words failing him. "What now?" Alex asked softly. Jackson smiled, taking his hand. "Now we go home and finally paint that nursery. Parker's been begging for blue walls." That evening, as they moved furniture from the nursery to create Parker's new room, the boy discovered the old stuffed giraffe hidden in the closet. "Can I keep him?" he asked. "Of course, Faro," Alex said, watching as Parker placed the giraffe on his bed. "What will you name him?" Parker thought for a moment. "Star," he decided. "Because he's tall enough to reach them." Alex caught Jackson's eye across the room, both recognizing David's words coming from Parker's mouth, like a message from somewhere beyond. Sometimes families aren't born, they're built, piece by piece, from the broken parts of other dreams. And sometimes the most beautiful things in our lives come to us not when we're searching, but when we're simply trying to survive another day in a rain-soaked diner, not yet realizing that the universe has other plans. Have you ever found family in unexpected places? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of healing and hope touched your heart, please subscribe to Heart Stories, where we believe every broken piece deserves to be part of something whole again.